Sorry about being so late with my video this week. I was away for the whole of last week until Wednesday, where I drove back from Queensland to Sydney, which took me 10 hours to drive on Wednesday. So I didn't quite get my video finished. And then yesterday, which was Thursday for us, was my son's 16th birthday, and I was pretty much busy all day doing that. Took him out to breakfast and dinner and things like that. And then in between all of that, I had my booster shot for COVID, and today it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I pretty much slept all day because I didn't feel good. So feeling much better this evening, and now I can finally finish my video. So in my video today, what I'm showing you is how I start to embellish my bunny block. So everything I'm doing today is just embroidery embellishment. So the first thing that I'm doing is I decide that I want my bunny to stand out a little bit. So I decide to couch a cotton thread around the bunny just to give it a bit of definition. So that's what I'm doing right now. I've got 2 threads, so a thicker one that I've already threaded through, and then the thinner one which is just a crochet cotton. It's a very thin crochet cotton, which I'm using to couch my bunny down. So with my couching, what I'm doing is I'm just making stitches over the thick cotton thread. They're probably about 3 mils apart. And I'm making sure that just in the corners that I've got a little stitch to hold that cotton thread in place. So you can see there just where the tail joins the leg, I've made sure I've done a stitch in that corner. So anytime I come to a corner, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure I do a stitch. So my whole video today was about 5.5 hours long. I did spend a long time embellishing this, but I'm only showing you snippets, so it's going to be cut up a bit so that it's not too long for you to watch. And it's pretty much all played in fast motion. We've already showed you how to do these stitches, so you should have an idea of what you're doing, and you don't need to watch me stitch the whole time, otherwise that'd be really boring for you. Okay, so I've finished couching around my bunny, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to embellish my flowers. So what I'm doing with this is I'm picking different colours that kind of go along with the colours that are printed on the fabric, and I'm just doing straight stitches. Now my stitches, I deliberately do them in different directions. They don't have to all be perfectly in the same direction. It's not like satin stitch where you keep them all the same and you try and make it really neat. I'm just doing stitches to fill in the spaces. So I've got a yellow center here on my flower, and I'm doing stitches with the yellow thread to cover up that yellow on the fabric. I will show you some close-up photos at the end of this video just so you can see what it looks like. I don't completely fill in everything on this flower. I actually leave some of the white fabric without stitching on it, but most of the flower ends up being covered up with stitches. And then I also do a little bit of embellishing on the leaves as well, which I'm going to show you in a little while. Once I finish this flower, I go on to the other flower, which is on the left-hand side of my bunny. So I'm just finishing off this flower now by stitching onto the red part. So I've got sort of a pinky red cotton and then more of a peachy kind of red cotton that I use. With my cottons, I'm using just a normal stranded cotton, 6 strands, all 6 strands. I'm not splitting the thread because I want it to look quite chunky. And again, you'll see that in detail when I show you the photo at the end. So here you can see my finished flower. You can see I've used different colours of threads and I've stitched in different directions just to make it look interesting. Now I'm starting on my other flower. I've actually already done a little bit and I'm using different colours. So this thread that I'm using right now is a variegated thread. So it's got sort of pinks and peachy colours, a little bit of yellow mixed in, makes it look interesting. So just like with the other one, I'm filling in the coloured areas with the coloured thread and just stitching in whatever direction I feel like doing. I almost feel like it's like painting the fabric. So I'm painting the fabric with the thread. And now I'm stitching another little flower that's at the top of the fabric. This time I'm using a variegated thread as well, which has sort of a beige colour, orange, yellow and pinky red. And it just makes the leaves look interesting, or not the leaves, sorry, the petals look interesting because the thread changes colours. All the flowers have been stitched, and now what I'm doing is I'm just embellishing the leaves. I'm doing what is called a feather stitch. It's not a stitch that we showed you, but I think Rachel did this one as well, and so you'll be able to see how to do this one in her video. Similar to fly stitch, but it does look slightly different. And on the left hand side where the leaves are, I'm just doing straight stitches again. Some are in a darker green and some are in this lighter green. It's kind of a silky thread. It's got a bit of a sheen to it. I think it actually is silk, and I'm just doing straight stitches to embellish the leaves. So I've finished all my flowers and leaves. Now what I'm going to do is give the bunny a little face. So I've got a sort of, it's a browny grey. It's kind of a dark grey but with a little bit of a brown tinge to it, the cotton. And again, I'm using the 6 strands. I'm just stitching a little nose on here using straight stitches to make the shape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a French knot for the eye and a couple of little stitches to sort of give the top of the eye. And then all of this stitching is done with the 6 strands until I get to the whiskers. And with the whiskers, I just use 2 strands because I want them to be thinner. So I think my bunny's looking pretty cute. And now what I want to do, the last thing that I'm going to stitch is I'm going to do the bunny tail. So with the bunny tail, I do turkey work. Gets a little bit tangled here. I've doubled the thread through my needle just to make it thicker. And what I do is I do end up changing. I was originally using just a normal embroidery needle and I change over to one of my milliner's needles because it's straight and I find it much easier to pull through the fabric. With this turkey work, what I'm doing is I'm just doing stitches where I have the loop on the front and then I come under the bottom and straight up to the top. When you learn turkey work, you can actually do a little anchor stitch, but I was also taught this method as well, which I find quite easy, and I didn't find that I needed the anchor stitch. All the at the end, all the stitches are really nicely held in place because I've literally just crossed them over on the back, so they're kind of all holding each other down, if that makes sense. So when I've done all my stitches, which you'll see in a minute, I trim the little loops so that it ends up looking like a pom-pom for a tail. I'm now using that milliner's needle. It's quite a big one that I mentioned before, and I'm just finding it much easier to pull the threads through. You can see how many sort of loops I've got there. There's a lot because I want my tail to be quite bushy and thick. So I'm putting in a lot of stitches. I'm again using a variegated cotton. It's one that's got some sort of winey pink colours, kind of wine colour, pinks, and it goes down to a pale pink. And I just like that because it gives some variation to the colour of the tail. So once this is fully completed, then what I do is that's when I'll bring out my scissors and trim it. All right, turkey work complete, and now it's time to trim, and you just keep snipping just like when you make a pom-pom, you just keep snipping, and then I fluff it up a bit and I snip it, make sure none of my loops are still there, making sure that I've cut them all, and I'll keep trimming until I'm happy with how it looks. Continually fluffing it up in between to make sure you capture any longer threads. So this is a picture of the detail of my flower on the left hand side, and I've pretty much filled that in with stitching. There's just a little bit of white there that isn't stitched on, and then also the green leaves as well. And now here is my full block for this week. So I've done all that floral embroidery, I've done the couching around the bunny, and I've made my turkey work tail. So next week, what I'm planning to do is finish off my block. I'm going to further embellish. I think I might do a little bit more on the rabbit. I just have to work out what that's going to be. And then I want to do maybe some flowers down in my greenery is what I'm thinking. Like a lot of people said, it's hard to know when to stop. You could keep going forever, but I do think I want to do a little bit more. So I will see you next Wednesday, where I will complete my block, and then I'm actually going to sew it into my book, and I'm going to show you how I do that so you can start sewing yours in as well. All right, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed what I did, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.